My name is Kuni Alabi, a cybersecurity specialist. I've been into IT for a number of years now, and my specialty in cybersecurity has been incident response and vulnerability management. I've used predominantly all the tools in the market, and probably the top three is what I've put under my name. A couple of certifications as well. This is good, like a recap of what we've talked about in the past. The idea behind this presentation is just to look into integration to the cloud. Most of us are really familiar with scanning our environment, our servers, our network devices, switches, routers, But with the way the market is moving over the last couple of years, most organizations have actually or are presently migrating their data and their access to the cloud. So which is the reason for this presentation. So vulnerability, we all know what that is. That's a weakness in a system that can be exploited by a threat actor. Please, if you have any question at any point, please feel free to draw me back, because I really want this session to be interactive as opposed to like a run through. Now, I've adapted this training to a real life scenario. Say you go into an interview, the sort of questions you're going to be asked. Because making up this presentation, I was asking myself some few questions, and that's how I've actually come up with this presentation. So at any point at all, please feel free to bring me back. Now, you would never go to a vulnerability assessment or vulnerability management interview without being asked any of these questions. Can you please define what vulnerability assessment is, the penetration test, and vulnerability management? There are three words that some people will use interchangeably, but to be honest, they are all different entities. Now, vulnerability assessment is just, think about it like a normal scan that you do within your business. Say there's a 0-day attack somewhere, your manager comes to you, Mr. Olumide, can you quickly run a scan and tell me how many assets within our business is actually vulnerable to that particular probably exploit or so. So that piece is called the vulnerability assessment. It's a one-time scan, or probably the scheduled scan that we guys normally do within our business. The major characteristics of vulnerability assessment is that it's actually done by someone in-house, probably by the IT security analyst in-house or the vulnerability manager in-house. So, and the aim of the vulnerability assessment is not to exploit the vulnerability that's been detected. All they just want to do is, how many vulnerabilities do we have on that machine? And let's fix it. As opposed to, okay, exploit it to be sure that vulnerability is there. So vulnerability assessment is just carried out by someone in-house. The aim is just to detect vulnerability and not to exploit. And probably, the scheduled scan we carry out on a monthly basis would actually fall into that as well. Now, the next piece is penetration test. Most organizations actually have to do this because they are looking for certification like the ISO and the PCI DSS and so. So the penetration test is just like a vulnerability scan or vulnerability assessment, but it needs to be done by an approved third party. So it can be done by someone in-house, right? And the actual aim is to exploit the vulnerability that's been reported on. So I'm going to cite a quick example. I managed a vulnerability, penetration test a couple of years ago. And when the report was sent to me, right, one of the vulnerability that was reported on was one of the cameras in our SOC, right, was configured with the default credentials, right? As a penetration tester, the first thing you do to any asset is try and use the default credentials to try and log into it, because most people don't change it, right? Now, from the report, they were able to log it into the camera within the SOC, and the guy in the SOC was actually sleeping because he was on night shift. And because they are pen testers, they need to prove to us that they were able to log into that machine or to that webcam, because it's going to be part of their report, right? So they took a snapshot of, the guy in the SOC, and that was part of the report, and he lost his job for that. So just reinforcing the fact that in penetration test, you need to exploit the vulnerability for you to confirm that you were able to do it. So, and the last phase is the vulnerability management. So that's just it envelopes the penetration tests and the vulnerability assessment. So vulnerability management is just that big brother that envelopes them. So in the vulnerability management, what you should be doing is once a month or a couple of times in a week, you need to scan your assets, understand what your critical assets are, and once in a year as well, you need to run a penetration test. So vulnerability management is that big brother that envelopes penetration test and vulnerability assessment. As I've said, if you have any question at any point, please feel free to. So I'm going to move through this because we have a couple of slides to cover. Now, in any interview you go to, they will tell me what you've been doing.
Yeah, quick question, Kule.
Please.
When you were talking about the vulnerability assessments, does it only apply to assessing of hardwares like physical infrastructures like routers, switches, server? And when you're talking about assessing of vulnerability assessment of, say, applications or business applications, for example, is that called something else, or is that also vulnerability?
No, they're all covered. All covered. Application.
So when you're doing the DAST and SAS testing, I suppose that's also looking for vulnerabilities within an application that's been developed, correct?
So they are all vulnerability. It all falls into the same thing.
All right.
Thank you. So say you go into any interview and they ask you as a vulnerability or an analyst or vulnerability management, and tell me what you've been doing with regards to vulnerability management. This is the answer to that question. As long as you can explain what you do as a vulnerability analyst or vulnerability manager with this process, then you stand about 65% of getting that job. So I'm just going to run through it quickly so I don't waste time on this. So the discovery phase is you go into an organization, they want you to take charge of the vulnerability management process, right? So the first thing you want to do is understand or discover all the assets or applications that requires owns right. So once all the assets have been discovered, the next thing is to prioritize those assets. Now, all organizations, the key to them, the system is going to lose money and stuff like that. So those assets needs to be prioritized as their critical assets. So example of this would be the website of Lost Bank. I mean, the server that's hosting the website is going to be a critical asset to them, because if that server goes down, the entire customer knows about it, right? Now, as opposed to a development server that's just used by the DevOps guys. So understanding the assets you have, prioritizing them is another key thing that needs to be done, because that's going to help your judgment when you then need to prioritize the vulnerabilities that's been reported on them. So a good example of the use of that is if you find a severity 4 vulnerability on a critical asset, and you find a severity 5 vulnerability on a development server, which one are you going to patch first? So the answer to that is just simple. Because the severity 4 asset is on a critical server, then that poses more risk to the business than the severity 5 server that is in-house and that's used by the development guys. So the next phase, once you're able to discover the assets, prioritize.
Sorry, excuse me. Please, can I ask a question around that?
Please.
If you say you have a severity 4 on a prod server, and you have 5 on on the development server.
Yeah.
So what about if for the 5 or on the 4 on the pro server doesn't have any exploits available in the wild, and the 5 on the test or development server is already have an exploit available in the wild?
So now,
which one do you prioritize in that?
So I'm going to come back. So we said a four on an external facing server, which is the website, right? And a 5 on a prod server, sorry, on a development server that is in-house. So any day, anytime for a machine to be in-house and that it is less critical, I'm still going to take because for you to be a CEF4 and it's actually external facing, do you know the CEF4, sorry, the development server, I can switch it off for a couple of days, but I cannot afford to switch off the internet facing server. So, but one thing I'm going to take a note of from your question is if there's no exploit, but trust me from experience, for a vulnerability to be a CEF4, right? It's going to be little chance that there's no exploit for it. So, but what I'm just going to have to look at is why is it categorized as a CEF4? If there's no exploit for it, why is it categorized as a CEF4? For a critical server external facing a CEF4, on top of my head, I'll go for the CEF4. Even if there's no exploit, I don't need to understand why it's being categorized as a CEF4. If the reason can be accepted and the reason why it's classified as a CEF4 is not as critical as the system is reporting it, then I'll then start looking at the system that's not critical. But the aim for me is I cannot afford to let my critical asset go down for any reason. I'd rather switch off the development server for a day and fix my critical server as opposed running around on a development server.
Yeah, fair enough.
Does that answer your question, please?
Yeah, cool. It's just just trying to twist it and make people understand, how you prioritize.
So for a CEF4, so for most organizations, right, they are really keen on their CEF4 and CEF5. CEF3, 2 and 1s, most people are not really keen about it, right? So for a CEF4 on a machine that's not critical, or sorry, on a CEF5 on a machine that's not critical, I'm not going to start running around. I will try to understand what my CEF4 is first, because and always remember as well, the CEF4 or the development server that's on a CEF5 is internal, is within the business. So there might even not be connection, there might not be any connection to the external world. So it can only be exploited within the business. So a CEF4 that is internet facing, that poses more risk to my business.
Yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense. Yeah, okay.
All right then, cool. So once that piece is done, so the next phase will be to carry out the scanning, right? So you carry out your scans, wherever the report is, you match it on so you scan. So after your scanning, you get the report, and that report is sent to the system owners. The system owner looks at it, they remediate, and once they remediate, they come back to you and you analyze whatever they've done, you rescan the server or the asset. If the vulnerability is still there, you go back to them to reanalyze or to repatch. If not, that ticket can be closed. So it's an iterative process. It goes on and on, like daily, monthly, yearly, and stuff like that. So that's just the process. I'm not sure.
Excuse me, I have a question.
Please, feel free.
Yeah, I've noticed that penetration testing is missing in the vulnerability management process.
Okay.
So is it correct to infer that penetration testing is not part of the vulnerability management process?
That's a good question. So yeah, so it comes in somewhere, right? Because what you do for penetration testing as well is someone is going to come in and test your system. So they are going to scan. So the penetration testing phase comes from number 3, right? The penetration testers, they start scanning your system, either externally or internally, depending on the type of penetration test you want to do. Whites, it could be a white hat, black hat, or a gray hat, right? Sorry, a gray, yeah, a white text, black text, or yeah. I'm sure you guys understand what I mean. So yeah, depending on type of penetration test you want to do, the starting point will be the scanning phase. So they begin to scan, right? So if they find any, so what they do is they scan, they gather their reports, and they forward to you as the vulnerability manager. You analyze the report, and what you want to do with that report is to remediate all the vulnerabilities that was reported, right? So you will be the one managing the remediation. So you look at all the vulnerability that was reported, you pass it on to the system owner to remediate it, and number 6, the rescanning continues. So that's where it comes in. So it's not specifically stated here, but it is, the process is always the same.
Kunle, if you don't mind, can I just come in quickly just to help him understand more? It depends on the kind of project you're working on as well. For example, when you add in a device to a DMZ, which is external facing device, most of the time you have to pen test them first before you add them there. Then that phase can be closed, and that's where penetration comes in. And most of the time that is being carried out by vendors or third party as well.
Okay, thank you.
All right, cool, thanks. So yeah, I'm just going to run through, because yeah, the idea behind today's topic is the cloud computing and the vulnerability management, right? So I'm just going to breeze through this because I know most people have at least basic understanding of what cloud computing is. So cloud computing is just, working on computing services via the internet, like the Microsoft Azure, the way we all connect, so there are 3 major types of cloud computing: is the public, private, and hybrid. The public is just everything delivered over the internet, things like your Microsoft Azure, the Google Drive, you use the Apple iCloud. The private cloud is, think about it as your data center now. I'll use that word, your data center, something you manage just for yourself. Most cloud providers, if you're rich enough, they can get you a private cloud, but it's really expensive. So just your private cloud as something you do not share with anyone, as opposed to public cloud, where the offering is being shared among their customers. And for the hybrid cloud is, that falls in between both. You host your critical applications or put your private data on the private cloud. And for, say, applications or servers that's not really critical to your business, you push those onto the public cloud. So that's it in a nutshell. Couple of types of cloud services. So infrastructure as a service is one of them. For that, you rent the IT infrastructure like servers, VM storage. You have to manage this yourself, right? So the major thing about the the infrastructure as a service is the fact that you have to manage the underlying technologies like the virtual machine storage networks. So why this is coming into this class is because if you're going as a vulnerability manager, or you'll be working on a cloud environment as a vulnerability analyst or manager, you need to understand the type of offering they have. If they are having just a pass and you want to go and be scanning servers, the first thing they would know you do not know what you're doing. So going to a cloud environment, you need to understand the offering they are subscribed to, so you can know what you'll be scanning. So yeah, so the next one is the platform as a service. So this is mostly used by the DevOps guys, just really designed to ease the way they create their web app or mobile app. So they do not manage any of the underlying infrastructure, they just manage the top layer. So a very good one I've added to it is called the serverless computing. So that's a very new kind of new technology, and that's what the AWS Lambda uses. So it is much more refined. You can't really tune it the way you tune the part. So it does exactly the same thing as the platform as a service does, but yeah, you don't have much flexibility on it as much as the platform as a service. And the software as a service, we all know what that is. We'll be all using all that for years. Example is the Skype. So all you're doing is you don't care about anything, even the software or anything. You just use the technology and the provider, the manager of the underlying technology. Example is the Office 365, the Skype, Dynamics CRM, and the likes. So we'll be moving to the interesting parts. So this is the cloud service, the shared responsibility kind of table. So this tells you, if you go in as a vulnerability manager for an organization that's using a platform as a service, the only thing you're bothered about is the applications and the data. You don't care how they scan their servers, you don't care about all those. If you're an organization if your organization is using the infrastructure as a service, you'll be bothered about the application, the operating system. You're not bothered about the server or the OS that sits on it. You'll be worried about the patches. Please, and the software, you can see you don't bother about anything. Any question?
Quick question, Kunle. So
John,
obviously on all of these different cloud services, you can do a vulnerability scan. Which one of them are you responsible for doing the pen test on? I know you don't need to do a pen test on the SaaS, but the PaaS and the IaaS, are you responsible for doing a pen test on either of them?
Yes, please. So, yes, please, 100%. So for most organizations, I just carried out one a couple of weeks ago. So because most people, they use the PaaS as a service, right? So all they put on there is their probably web application servers. It sits, say, on Azure or AWS. So you are responsible for scanning that application for any vulnerability and patching it. So all you'll be bothered about is the application that you are hosting on that platform. So that's where the application testing comes in, the web application test and stuff like that comes in. And that's where we'll be talking about the WAF, the web application firewalls as well.
Okay, so in other words, you scan and pen test whichever one you're responsible for.
Yes, please, yeah.
Okay.
Quick question.
Okay.
Yes, it's a follow-up to the previous question that you just answered. And I wanted to find out, does scope also matter when it comes to scanning here in this particular scenario?
Sorry, does what?
The scope.
Sorry, I don't understand.
Desktop.
The scope.
Desktop.
The scope.
Yes, the scope. Because, yes.
Okay, you mean the scope of the test?
Yes, the scope
Yeah,
of the
definitely.
test.
So when you're engaging a pen tester, you need to define a scope. I just don't want to go too deep into that. That's like a pen testing piece. So before you get anyone to test your environment, scoping is the first thing. This is what we want you to do. Even if, because a couple of years ago, I managed a pen test, right? I don't want to name any organization. We used a particular organization. We gave them a scope. If you find any vulnerability, do not pass it on to anyone. It was a mistake from their end. The report, they sent it to audiences that were not supposed to have it. And since then, we've not used them again. We wanted to sue them for that, but scope is really key. It needs to be defined and agreed on before any penetration test happens. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
You're welcome. Can I move on, guys?
Yes, please.
Now, there are too many solutions out there that does vulnerability management. This is Gartner. It's one of the best pieces you can get information from. So this is not a recent rating, so don't take this for the recent rating. I just took this up from my old slides. So, but the top three, I always recommend those: Tenable, Rapid7, Qualys. I've used them extensively, and they still remain the market leader at Tenable. Now, this is the most interesting part for me, right? I'm not going to make it too complicated, but I'm just going to tell you how you can, because I brought this piece in because of an interview I carried out on someone. The question I asked that person in the interview was, if we have a server that's logged up somewhere, we don't want it to be internet facing, we don't want, it's not going to be part of the everyday server because of the kind of information it's holding. How are we going to scan it on a daily basis? Right? So that's the question. And the simple answer I was looking for was put the cloud engine or the agent on it, like the agent on that server. Even if it's put in a subnet, it doesn't matter. As long as the agent is sitting on there, it's going to push its vulnerability information to the cloud or wherever your scan engine is. Now, that's the reason for this. So I'm going to explain this infrastructure probably in a minute so that we can all move on. So if you look at this, right, your internal network, what you have on there, this is how we place our scan engines when we're designing, a new vulnerability management solution. So you've got your internal network, you've got your standard users, and you've got your DMZ. That's something that's kind of internet facing, but it's got like a firewall. If you look at this place, I'm just going to use my mouse. Is it working? So this is what we call the security console. This is what you log into to see how many vulnerabilities your server has got. You can see we've got another one here as well. Now, if I want to scan my network to check out vulnerabilities within my network, as if the hacker or the threat actor is within my network, I'm going to scan from the security console in here within the internal network, right? If I want to scan the DMZ network as if the attacker was within this DMZ, I can use this scanner here to do it. Now, say I want to scan as if the attacker was outside. So if you're using any of the solutions, say Collis, you're using Rapid7, you're using Nexus, they have what we call their hosted scan engine. So it's placed somewhere in their cloud. So when you get subscriptions from them, they give you access to these security consoles and the hosted scan engine. So if you want to scan from outside, just to see how an attacker from the outside would see your network, so you're going to launch a scan from the hosted scan engine. But if you want to scan as if the attacker was within your business, you scan with the security console. Is that clear, please?
Yeah.
All right, then. Now, a question now that comes up every time, or that I've seen from experience, it's, say we do not have a scan engine in the DMZ, and we want to scan with the security console in the internet, in the internet network. How are we going to approach that? Right, I wouldn't want to waste time. So the simple logic there is, definitely there's going to be a firewall between the internal network and the DMZ. So you just allow traffic. You go to your network guys. Some of us on this call might be network guys. They know what to do. You allow traffic or create a rule on your firewall to allow traffic from the IP address of the security console to this DMZ subnet. So then if you ping any machine on the DMZ, you'll be able to get it from this machine. Then scan traffic from this place, from the internet network, you'll be able to reach the DMZ. So it's something that comes up in the interview. That's why I'm raising it. Moving on to the next slide. So that sounds so much like, now, same thing happened. So, so many years ago, I used to think there's a lot of disparity between scanning, the way I was scanning on-premise servers and the way I'm going to be scanning, devices in the cloud. But after I got into it, right, I didn't notice not much of a difference. So the only difference would be two things you can do. Because always remember, your cloud network, okay, for organizations, say we are in Amazon and we've got a lot of instances, we've got S3 buckets and the likes, right? And you want to scan those devices as well. So what you're going to be doing is you can place your scanner, your security console in each of the virtual private clouds, or from your on-premise network, you can allow traffic to the virtual private clouds as well. So whichever way, so that's just a design. But the most important thing is wherever console you're going to be scanning from, there must be traffic, like you must have a firewall rule, or the scanner must have traffic allowed to wherever asset you want to scan, wherever it is. Now, the best thing for me I've seen is using agents. So if you use agents like cloud agents or private agents, I don't want to use cloud now. If you put agents on any asset you want to scan, you don't need to start opening firewall rules. Automatically, the agent is kind of connected to the engines, and it's just going to be pushing out its data to it. Is that clear, guys?
When you say agent, you mean like the EC2 connectors?
Yes. So there is for college there's college cloud agents. For Rapid7, they've got their own agents as well.
Because of
so do you mean via a GUI?
Pardon?
Do you mean via a GUI?
Because reason why I'm asking, because
Okay.
recently I worked on Qualys scanning on AWS environment. So
yeah.
Basically what you do is because we have the Qualys agents sitting on-prem on our AWS environment.
Okay.
So we have other AWS accounts that you want to scan, that you want Qualys to be able to talk to.
Okay.
So the way we configure is you configure like we call it EC2 connector on all the AWS accounts, which you then point to the in-house Qualys agent. Then what this does is whatever you want to scan, from your console, you run the scan, you connect to the Qualys web, the cloud, or what do you call it?
Yeah.
Then that talks, it scans externally to the AWS environment, and that talks.
But do you have agents on the so that's the difference. So do you have agents on the EC2 instances at all?
On the EC2 instances, yes, when you're doing the connector, he installs the agent.
All right, so the most so the Qualys connector, what job was it doing? Is it to connect the subnets, or what was the job of the connector for you?
Yeah, it's to connect the okay. I think it depends on the architecture, the account, to the master account.
Exactly,
to the master account.
Yeah, so that's what the connector does. It's not to the Qualys, it's just to connect the VPCs together.
Yeah.
All right. Cool. Thank you, guys. Can I move on? Mr. BJ, can I move on, or any further questions?
Yeah, sure. I just pointed that out so that for people to know that there's something within Qualys.
Thank you very much. I learned colleague. Thanks. Yeah, so once you're scanning for AWS, these are the kind of assets you'll be seeing: your EC2 instances, your VPCs, S3 buckets, your HAM policies, and your AWS configuration. Those are the kind of things you're going to be thinking about when you're scanning your AWS. So if you're scanning Azure, you'll be thinking about your VMs, your databases, and the likes. So yeah, this is just a screenshot just to give you a glance of the type of assets and things you'll be thinking about. So these are the resources, in AWS. Now, for vulnerability scanner, what do they really offer? Now, most things they offer is asset management. If you log in, if you get any of the tools, you have the capability to do inventory on all your assets. Of course, yeah. For instance, I worked in an organization that never had an asset database. So one of the first jobs I did for them, because once you have a vulnerability management solution in place, it gives you the capability to do an inventory on all the assets that have got an IP address within your business. So from there, you can start building an asset database. So that was really effective. And the certificate inventory as well for your machines that have got certificates. You can pick up all the certificates, help you determine when they are expiring and stuff like that. Now, IT security offering, it's, I know most of us have really used. That's where the vulnerability management side of things is. You've got your threat protection, your continuing monitoring, patch management, indicator of compromise, certificate assessment. For your compliance, you've got the policy compliance, security configuration assessment, PCI, and the theme. For the cloud and container security, which is the most interesting for me, you've got your cloud inventory, so that helps you. So the screen I showed the other time is like an inventory of all the resources you have in your cloud environment. So for cloud security assessment, it can help you. That tool, I used it and it was really cool. It can help you check the configuration of all the resource you have, and that can help you align it to the business. To the what's it called now? To the industry standard. So if you are thinking about a CIS, certification and stuff, you can do like a cloud security assessment and compare whatever you have to the CIS and configuration piece, and that can tell you how beautiful your security landscape is. So the container security, that can help you scan your. So we're going to talk more on this cloud container and security. So web application secure scanning. So the web application security, that embodies the web application scanning, which is one of the best tools you will have for web application. And now Qualys has got the web application firewall functionality as well. So what that piece does is, say you have an obsolete application that you cannot patch, right? You can put a web application firewall in front of it. Now, where Qualys or probably whatever solution you use comes into place, it can scan the web application firewalls, and any vulnerability it finds, it automatically pushes it to the web application firewall, so I can update its database and protect those web applications from those vulnerabilities. Quite interesting, to be honest. Now, yeah, most scanners right now, they've got the API integration, so you can integrate your ticketing system, your patching solutions, automation and projects. Now, this was the last project I did for a company. So what we did was for the automation side of things, we're able to automate the vulnerability management solution to CSEAN. So the automation, what it just does is we put in a workflow. If you find this vulnerability with this piece, the patch is already in CSEAN, it pushes it to the server. So that was how we're able to take a bit of workload off the infrastructure guys. So that was a really, really cool feature of the automation. And the live dashboard is one of my best features as well. So rather than scanning to see vulnerabilities on the system, the live dashboard can give you details of the most vulnerable assets within your business, the assets that poses most risks to your business, the vulnerability that's posing, gives you that on a pane, on a pane, it gives you all that information, and you can actually go after the things that actually that poses risk to your business, as opposed to going into every system to work on them. So yeah, I've brought out this slide just to talk more on the cloud side of things. So the cloud inventory, I've actually talked about it anyway. It's just to discover and provide an inventory of your cloud assets. The cloud security assessment, yeah, as I've mentioned before, you can scan, assess your cloud environment, and put it as a benchmark to probably the AWS foundation, just to see how secure and how compliant your environment is. The Docker container security, I know the Docker, it's, I've explained it there, it's a tool designed to make, so a container is just like an envelope that developers use at the moment. So they use it to package up an application. So that application comes with everything it needs, just in a single container. That's why the word container comes in. So a couple of years ago, that was a big problem, because when they are working on the container, security was never put into consideration. So this piece in vulnerability management gives you the capability to, scan those containers as they are being worked on. So you can scan assets within your public cloud environment to find out the hosts that host those containers. You can check for vulnerabilities and misconfiguration before they go live. And you can connect to private and public containers as well, before they are all deployed into the production environment. So yeah, so that's one of the coolest features for me when it comes to the cloud side of things. So any question before we go to this last section, please? Because this is going to be a controversial piece. So,
right, so let me ask a question quickly on the slide before the previous one. So previous to this and previous to this, sorry. All right, okay. So in terms of scanning, are there native tools like AWS Inspector that could be at par with maybe Qualys or Nessus? Is this something that you have used? Because I've worked in an environment where they've used Inspector, and it also has an agent.
Yeah.
So the agents get deployed to maybe the Linux servers.
Yeah.
And also they use this in conjunction with Guard Duty, which is kind of like an intrusion detection kind of system.
Yeah, so I've utilized all those things as well, right? So what happens is those stores are vendor proprietary, like they come with that solution. So
Yeah,
you have to pay for the subscription as well. But from experience, right, the third-party solution. So what I would not advise a customer to do is use the same solution, use their security tools. It's really cool to use a third-party solution to penetrate your organization to see how vulnerable you are, as opposed to something. So yeah, as opposed to something.
but how can you justify that to a customer, for instance? How can you, because sometimes they want you to give some kind of business justification of why they should go with a third party.
So for me, it's one, redundancy. If Microsoft has got any problem or Azure has got any problem, the entire solution is gone.
Okay.
Two, Qualys would not only do your cloud environment, it does your on-prem, it does many other solutions. So there are a couple of reasons why I would go for a third party. And they probably, so for Qualys, you know them for vulnerability management.
Yep.
Azure, AWS, they do everything. So from experience, go with the guys that they know their stuff, as opposed to trying out new guys.
I think maybe I can come in a little bit there. Sometimes it's better to apply, check and balances. And the only way you can do that is to apply what do you call it, segregation of duty, because you don't want, like my colleague rightly said, you don't want the same company to be doing everything. So if something's gone wrong, nobody's there to actually flag that out, say, okay, something's not right. Because if they're the one managing the whole thing, if something goes wrong, they might decide to find a way of covering it up. So yeah, I think it's good to maintain the segregation of duty concept.
Okay. So the other question, I don't know if you're going to talk about like continuous integration, continuous deployment pipeline, and the scanning of maybe like static scanning of applications, containerized applications. I know you've mentioned that. Are you going to talk about that?
So for me, it's as simple as that for me. Like once you have this tool, know where your containers are, then you can probably have a scheduled scan on them on a weekly, monthly basis, so depending on how you want to schedule your scan. So the most important thing for you is have that solution in-house, ensure it is discovered by the assets. So the vulnerability management process now comes back in, right? Get it discovered, then you can do any configuration you want to do So if there's any misconfiguration at any, so that's where one of the features you get in them is the continuous monitoring, right? So if you look at this piece, so there's the continuous monitoring capability. So as long as it's been discovered by the asset, it gives it a continuous monitoring. If there's any misconfiguration at any point, it points it out to you. If there's any IOC in the wide that affects such a container or application, you're being alerted on all those things as well. Does that answer your question, please?
Yes, but what I'm also talking about is, for instance, you have a bunch of developers, they're working on code, each person, they're doing unit testing, and then there's integration testing. Obviously, Qualys is also able to do some scanning, like before the code is actually deployed to like staging environment, before it then goes into production.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
I don't know if I can comment, because for my previous contract here, we had such kind of process, which is called ad hoc scan, where the request comes in, because they carry you along as the development team are developing a particular application. Before it goes live, there are some certain amount of scan you need to carry out. Then you pass the remediation action back to them. So it's not part of the normal monthly scan. It's an ad hoc scan. It's a request.
So that's one thing that happens. So right. I've taken it off this slide because my standard slide for vulnerability management has got that triggers okay. For vulnerability scanning. One of them, servers are being scanned. Like for new servers before they go into production, they need to be scanned for vulnerability. Another one is for testing. So because of the DevOps, the way they work, because they work in stages for application development. So for every stage, there's always a requirement coming to you as a vulnerability manager to scan. But what I am emphasizing is, as long as that asset or that application or that container has been discovered, right. By your tool, all you just need to do is go back there, give it a rescan, push it onto them. If it's a new one that's not been discovered, that is when you then go and add that asset to the tool to have it scanned for you. But if it's an asset, say a development container that they use for, it's been known by the tool. So for that, there's continuous monitoring. You can do an ad hoc scan. So that's possible, to be honest. And that's the easiest part of the job as well.
Can I just maybe just corroborate on what Kay is been saying? So the containerization, normally you kind of maybe configure your containers from a Docker image, and once the Docker image is actually being passed into the system, configured with the vulnerability scanner, then as soon as you create a new Docker container, then the image, you just extract the content and continuously do the continuous scan, which makes it much more easier, like it's actually explained. So it's a continuous process. So long as you initially scan the Docker image, then every other subsequent container that are created from that image will kind of fall into the pipeline and will be able easily be scanned alongside.
All right. Thanks.
And Wazoo is kind of a very good tool that also does that. Very cool. It's an open source tool as well.
Right.
Well, Mr. Lumi, thank you for that. But most organizations would never go with an open source. I don't know if you've noticed that.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying it depends on the security architecture or the design or what kind of area that each of the tools needs to come in. But
I think some organization uses Wazoo.
All right, then, cool.
In my last role, they use Wazoo.
Sorry, I don't know if I can okay. I don't know if I can say something here. I don't want to get an understanding from what the previous person was asking regarding developers developing codes and then you having to check if the codes are secure, because there's something called the DAS and then the SAS as well when it comes to code development. So which is more of like the security testing, which involves you scanning those codes for possible
Okay, we're struggling to hear you, okay.
Oh, sorry. How about now? Hello, can you hear me now?
Yeah, a lot better now, thank you.
Yeah, so sorry, I think from what the other brother was asking about developers developing code, and then you have to check those codes if they are okay before they continue with their development. I think they do more of application security testing in that aspect. Yeah. And there are tools that help when it comes to that. I think that's where the tools like that does static application testing and dynamic, which is more of like the check marks, the error codes that comes into play. So those ones help whereby they're developing their codes, they need to test it. And because most people go into do agile, they work in an agile environment. So continuous integration and design comes into place where you need to automate that process. So I think that a little bit of a step, a little bit higher than when you are scanning containers to check for compliance issues and continuous configuration here. That's in the case where you're actually checking against certain vulnerabilities like application vulnerability, like the cross-site scripting and all of those ones. So there are other tools that can come into place to help. The likes of Collis and the likes of them, I don't think they will be able to give more details into those ones.
No, there's a future
because we're scanning within code now.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. If it's code that you are scanning within, then you will have to employ some tools like check marks, for instance, or I know Rapid7 has got one like AppSider or AppSec.
Exactly. So that was what I wanted to mention.
Yeah,
so
AppSec,
you can integrate all these
so you can integrate them
console to do them for you. So they have what these guys are doing is they know what they are doing. These guys selling this tool. How would you expect Collis not to have the capability to scan a code if all they major in is vulnerability management? So what they've not done is sell it as a standard package. So if you want it, you pay additional money for it, and they can help you integrate it to the standard tool. So everything is possible as long as you can pay for it.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Any other question, guys? Thanks for coming in, and I think that was really cool.
I have a question, and sorry that the presentation is actually gone far from where I was actually meant to ask the question, but I was hoping to ask this at the later end. From kind of experience, I just want to kind of maybe gauge my experience with maybe other people's experience. And the question is regarding an agent scanning, scanning processes versus the
authentication.
Yes, not even like agent scanning against the kind of subnet scanner that you have a scanner within a particular subnet that does, the scanning.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
The agent does this, the agent scanning. If you have the agent, it scans straight into the cloud repository of the cloud provider, and the scanner within the subnet kind of reports into the security inventory tool, which it then manages. So I just want to ask, in terms of the enrichment, in terms of the quality of the data that both kind of scenario scans, which one would you kind of say is quite very much accurate as opposed to the other one? Is he having the scanner within the subnet that is able to scan some particular subnet, or having the agent maybe reporting full vulnerabilities, performing full authentication report and stuff like that?
Any day, anytime, I'll go with my agent, because with agents you have, I said if anyone has got any other ideas, but I'll go for my agent any day, anytime. It gives you real time, information about the vulnerabilities, landscape of your environment. So I'll go with agent any day, anytime.
What about the appliances? What do they sit?
Appliances,
appliances, yeah.
All that does.
Police appliances, what do they sit within the?
So that sits probably in your data center. Everything within your, probably the agents, it gets pushed to that appliance, and with that single appliance, it pushes the information out to Collis.
Okay, thank you, Kay. That is kind of the same perception I have, because the agent is more reliable in terms of quality of data, and is also on the real time. Yeah. Oftentimes, authentication scan fails on the scanner within the subnet, and they kind of have a misreporting positioning when you try to. So I've also had that experience where I wanted to just check with someone much more expertise within the field, just to have a second kind of
okay, go ahead.
I think both are useful, isn't it? The authentication scan and then the agent scan as well. I think they just complement each other. So I don't think
I'm asking about the quality of the scanning report.
So you wouldn't need authentication once you have agents in, would you?
Yeah.
No, you would.
Yeah. So, and for me, it takes up the risk of putting credentials on machines. Right. So that takes. Okay. Go ahead.
I think the benefit of you using the scanner is you having a picture of what an attacker can do outside of, with an agent. The agent is sitting on the system. What if an attacker wants to break into a system? So that scanner coming from outside gives you the picture of an attacker trying to. Most
organizations, you still have the capability to use your scanner if you need to. Don't forget that. So that doesn't mean because you have agents that takes off your scanner. You still have the capability to run an ad hoc scan on your environment. What the agent does is it reports to the cloud or probably to your database. Probably if you configure it once, probably in every hour, whatever vulnerability it finds, whatever patches that you report it. But if you need to run an ad hoc scan to generate reports, you are still able to do that with your scanner. That doesn't take off. Because you're running agents, doesn't take off the scanner piece of your infrastructure.
Okay.
Any other question, guys? I'm looking at the time now.
I don't have a question. Mine is a request whether you can make available your presentation for download.
100%.
Yes, it was really good. I liked it. Thank you.
Don't worry about that. We're going to make them available. Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
I have a question, and it's on reports, if you don't mind. When you generate a report from say for example, you use Qualys and it generates a report, do you simply pass that report on to the management or the people that you're supposed to report into, or do you do a bit of write-up as an interpretation of what the Qualys report itself has churned out?
That's a good question. So depending on the organization, right? I've done this piece for about 3 different organizations. The first one, what I do was for the guys that we're going to patch, the IT guys or infrastructure guys, I give them an Excel sheet which have the vulnerability, the severity, and what they need to do to fix it. For management, I just run the, the management report of the tool, and that was it. Exactly. Now, there's a bank I worked for. For them, you need to pull that data, and they have specific requirements in their report. For them, they might tell you, I want to know all the vulnerabilities that are severity 4 within the last 1 year. So that you can't pull that report straight away from Qualys. You said that you use commands to pull the report. And once you even have the report, they now need a deck, a PowerPoint deck for you to put the graphs and stuff. So depending on your audience, right, will determine the type of report you pull out. So yeah, depending on the organization, depending on your audience, some very easy to fix, some you have to do a lot of work to get that piece completed. And that's the only piece I eat in this job, the reporting side. I don't like it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other question, guys? If no, I'm just going to go to the last slide, which I know is going to be controversial. You're interested, cloud technology, vulnerability management? Yes, why not? So for me, certification is really important, but understanding the technology is key, right? Especially for vulnerability management into the cloud. I don't see, understanding vulnerability is good, but you need to understand the technology you're scanning as well. So which certification should I go for first? This is personal because I know this is going to be controversial. These are very good certifications for it, but which one, say you want to pick one right away, which one should you do? I'd like guys to come in at some point anyway. Personally for me, I'll probably go for the AWS Azure, one of them, just to understand how the technology works. Then probably go for the CCSP just to crown up my skill in the cloud piece. So that's my personal view. I know other people have different views. because I just don't see myself having the CSP first. I don't understand how Amazon or AWS work. Then, I might struggle there. But that's just my personal opinion. So you say someone is interested, I'll say pick either AWS, Azure. Just that gives you a general understanding of how the technology works. Then if you need to scan stuff, do anything, and then you understand the technology, then the CCSP or the CCSS then gives you like a professional or specialist certification to crown it all up in that field. So yeah, that's all.
I think for me, I will go for the vendor neutral cloud security certification first, because that helps you to understand, cloud governance, compliance, and so on. So because with the vendor specific ones, we have the likes of Azure, we have AWS, and so on. You can always pick that up. Once you understand the underlying concept, behind the governance and compliance, I believe it's easy to understand.
Yeah, as I've said, I knew that was going to be.
It's just me, just my
so it's a personal.
There's no best way around it, to be honest.
Exactly. So whichever one gets a certification, understand the technology, and you'll be good to go, guys.
Hello, maybe just 1 minute. If I would come in, I think it depends on what you want to achieve. So, sorry, can you hear me? Hello?
We can hear you clearly, okay.
Yeah, so I think personally, it depends on if you are the kind of person that wants to be a lot of hands-on. I think you want to go for the vendor-specific ones, because that helps you to be hands-on very well immediately, and then you can hit the ground running. But if you are the kind of person that you are more of want to be someone that knows just on the surface, then you pick up from the vendor neutral one. But to be hands-on, I think the vendor specific one takes you into the nitty-gritty of the whole thing, and it's always a good head start. That's what I think though.
Also for me personally, I think I support Tommy quite very strongly. I would prefer to specialize in a particular vendor and or understand the full operational principles, nitty-gritty around that particular vendor, so that at least I'm pretty much spot on if they ask any question, and I pretty much maybe know a particular angle. Then the kind of the CCSP, the CCSS kind of the vendor neutral one kind of overlays, and oftentimes you find the vendor neutral ones having a lot of concepts which in an ideal sense doesn't not necessarily apply to every organization, but because it's vendor neutral, they want it to kind of cover a wide spectrum of areas. But the vendor specific one gives you proper detailed understanding around that particular technology, and you'll be able to, and once you understand that operational principle, it would be easily transferable to other kind of maybe vendors within that kind of the same market space, if that makes sense. That would be my own personal preference as well. I mean,
as I've said, it's quite interesting to bring up this topic, because I know it's going to be like everyone, whatever you're doing, your area specialization would actually determine that certification you'll be going for. If you want to become like the managers and stuff that don't want to be technical at all, they just want to manage and stuff, they wouldn't want to do the hands-on side. They just want to go for the professional certification and stuff. So depending on who you have will determine. So I'm not saying you have to do this or that, but the idea is just understand the technology. And the best way to understand the technology is you don't even have to write certification. You can get one of the trainings, just understand what the technology is saying, then get your certifications and you'll be good to go. And that is it from me today. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks, Kunle. Thank you very much for your time, Kunle. That's quite insightful. I don't know if any of us have seen the vulnerability management presentation, maybe about a year ago now. It's refreshing to have a cloud-focused version of it. And thank you very much. And I think we're going to be wrapping up. We've gone 45 minutes over, but we've quite enjoyed the session. There's been lots of questions, and Kunle style